The sky dies first. It is not a sudden death, but a slow, agonizing bleed. For 3 days, the sun has been a weak, jaundiced eye glaring through a haze of high-altitude dust that turns the lush green of the Jurassic rainforest into a sickly, washed-out parody of itself. The clan of the Long River, a resilient branch of Homo Erectus, feels the change in their bones. The air, usually thick with the wet, fertile breath of life million years ago, now carries a dry, sharp-toothed chill and the faint, unsettling smell of a distant forge. Kella, the old woman whose face is a map of 100 seasons, tastes the ash on the wind and feels a dread colder than the unnatural morning frost. The younger hunters, led by the broad-shouldered Grak, grow restless. The game is gone. The chattering monkey kin are silent, the fleet-footed ornithomimids have vanished, and even the air is empty of the familiar calls of pterosaurs. This is a new kind of quiet. A profound and menacing emptiness that speaks of a world holding its breath before a scream. The first tremor is a minor thing, a liquid shudder in the earth that sends a cascade of pebbles down the cliff face opposite their cave. But the second, a day later, is a deep, grinding roar from the planet's gut. It throws them from their feet. It cracks the great stone overhang that has sheltered their ancestors for generations. From the north, the direction of the smoking mountain that has always been a benign feature of the horizon, a colossal pillar of black smoke and fire now tears a hole in the sky. The sun is finally uncompletely devoured. A permanent, suffocating twilight descends, and with it comes the grey snow. It is not water. It is fine, gritty ash that coats every leaf, chokes every stream, and blankets the world in a shroud of monochrome death. The great ferns, the lifeblood of the forest, begin to wilt and collapse under the weight. This is not a season. This is an ending. Kella gathers the clan's elders. Her voice is low, raspy with a new grit in the air. She speaks not of spirits or omens, but of a simple, brutal truth. The world they know is now a tomb. There is no more food here. The water will soon be poison. They must leave. Grak argues, his knuckles white on the shaft of his flint-tipped spear. This is their home. To leave is to walk into an unknown void. A fine dusting of grey settles on his own hair, and the hacking cough of his youngest child echoes from the back of the cave. The debate is over before it truly begins. Their survival skills, honed for a green world, must now be adapted for a grey one. They gather what they can. Dried meat now precious as life itself, water skins, heavy furred pelts, and the sharpest of their ancient tools. They take one last look at the cave paintings, the ochre handprints of their human ancestors, now fading under a film of volcanic dust. Then, as one, 30 souls step out from the shelter of their history, leaving the Long River behind. They turn their faces south toward the legend of a place whispered by migrating clans, a sanctuary called the Valley of the River Giants, a place the ash might not reach. They step into the cold. The grey, the silence, a small, desperate procession of early humans at the dawn of a new and terrible epoch prehistoric life. The Great Migration has begun. The world is a graveyard. For weeks they walk a path of ghosts, through skeletal forests and across plains silenced by the ever-falling ash. The weak die. An old mount sits down by the path, nods to Grak, and does not get up again. A child, her lungs full of grit, is buried under a cairn of ashen stones. The clan shrinks, hardened by grief and gnawing hunger. Their journey becomes a brutal rhythm of walking, scavenging for frozen root, and huddling together for warmth against a cold that seeps into their marrow. The migration path is a funnel, forcing all life south along the banks of the one great river that still flows, its waters sluggish and grey. They are not alone. They see the spectral shapes of other refugees, herds of dazed iguanodons, small, shivering flocks of feathered raptors, all moving with the same desperate southern urge. And then they begin to find the bodies. Not creatures who have starved or frozen, but things that have been torn apart. A huge Parasaurolophus, its flank ripped open, its hollow crest shattered. The tracks around the carcass are monstrous, a set of three-toed prints the size of skinning shields. But the true horror is the long, deep groove dragged in the ash between them. Grak finds it first, a single, conical tooth, as long as his forearm, lying half buried in the grey sludge. He knows this sign. This is the mark of the river devil. He sees it 2 days later, and through the perpetual gloom a shape moves in the shallows. It is a thing of impossible scale, a nightmare-given form. A long, crocodilian snout sniffs the air, but it is the thing on its back that freezes the soul, the gigantic sail of skin and bone, a tombstone cleaving the misty air, the Spinosaurus. It moves with a terrifying, languid confidence, its immense bulk supported by the water. It is also starving. Its aggression, normally confined to the river, has been sharpened by the apocalypse. It patrols its shrinking territory with a vicious hunger, seeing anything that approaches the water as a potential meal. The clan is now trapped in a moving prison. To their west are impassable, ash-choked mountains. To their east, a barren wasteland. Their only path is south along the river, and the river belongs to the beast. The great challenge of their new existence is learning its rhythms. Kala watches it 4 days, her sharp eyes cataloguing its movements. It patrols a 10-mile stretch, hunting the sluggish, oxygen-starved fish trapped in deep pools. It is most active at dawn and dusk. It rests during the grey midday, often lurking, almost fully submerged, near a specific bend in the river where the current is slowest. This is the heart of their hard choice, a debate whispered around a pathetic fire of damp wood. They must cross the river to follow a faster route south. They can attempt it at midday, risking the crossing on flimsy rafts of deadwood while the beast rests, a gamble that it will not see or hear them. Or they can take a week-long detour overland, a path that will expose them on open, ashen plains, with no water and no guarantee of finding the river again. Grak wants to risk the detour. Kala argues for the crossing, to stay in its territory for another week. She rasps, is to guarantee it will pick them off one by one. The clan looks at the grey water, then at the endless grey plains, and sees 2 different pictures of death. Every distant rumble of a landslide sounds like the footfalls of the river devil, a constant, oppressive reminder of the gargantuan scale of the predator that now defines their hominid history. The decision is made by the hunger. They will cross. Kayela's plan is not one of courage, but of desperate, intelligent calculation, a strategy that hinges on understanding the appetites of monsters. For 2 days, the clan's fastest runners, nearly invisible in their ash-caked hides, shadow a herd of Parasaurolophus. The herbivores are on edge, their mournful calls, amplified by their hollow crests, echoing a constant, nervous lament across the blighted landscape of this ancient toad. The plan is to turn their panic into a shield. The crossing point is a wide, slow delta, a braid of shallow channels and muddy islands. Downstream, hidden by a bend, is the Spinosaurus' midday resting pool. Grak and 5 of the strongest hunters carry torches, their carefully nurtured embers glowing like captive stars. At Kayela's signal, a sharp whistle that cuts through the gloom, they will descend upon the herd from the north, driving them south, directly past the crossing point. The thunder of 100 panicked giants, a feast of unimaginable proportions, should be an irresistible lure for the starving predator. It is a gamble on the monster's most basic instinct. The rest of the clan waits, hidden amongst skeletal trees, their crude rafts of bundled logs clutched in trembling hands. The children are silent, their eyes wide with a terror that needs no explanation. The signal comes. A chorus of shouts and the crackle of fire split the air. The earth begins to tremble. The Parasaurolophus herd explodes into motion, a stampede of flesh and fear. Their deep, resonant calls become shrieks of panic as they crash through the deadwood, a living avalanche aimed to misdirect the attention of a god. For a heart-stopping moment, there is no response from the river. Then a colossal shape erupts from the grey water downstream. The Spinosaurus rises, its sail slick with mud, its roar sound that feels like the world tearing into fleeing shapes of the humans. Its entire being is fixated on the immense, chaotic offering thundering past. As the predator crashes into the flank of the herd, dragging down a bellowing herbivore, the second part of the plan begins. Now. Kala screams. The clan pours from the trees, dragging their rafts into the water. They paddle with flat stones, with their bare hands, their movements frantic. The water is freezing, the current stronger than it looks. A raft carrying two of the older women overturns, and they are swept away in the grey torrent without a sound. There is no time to mourn. All focus is on the far bank, a line of salvation in the gloom. The sounds of the slaughter behind them are horrific, a symphony of splintering bone and torn flesh that fuels their desperate flight. As GRAK's raft, the last one, scrapes against the southern bank, he looks back. Through the mist and dash, he sees the Spinosaurus, its long snout crimson, raising its head from its keel to stare directly at them. There is no rage in its eyes, only the cold, ancient indifference of a force of nature. They have merely offered it a more convenient meal. They scramble up the bank, the tattered, weeping, and profoundly alive remnant. The air seems thinner, the light a shade less grey. They have reached the gateway to the Valley of the River Giants, a sanctuary bought with sacrifice and a deep, primal understanding of the prehistoric life they inhabit. Their migration is over. The great struggle has been won. This was not a victory that would be painted on cave walls. There was no glory in it, only the grim satisfaction of breath in aching lungs. The crossing of the delta, the outwitting of the river devil, was a brutal piece of calculus performed by a species armed with little more than desperation and the unique ability to model the behavior of their gods and monsters. These acts of coordinated foresight, born in the crucible of a dying world, are the bedrock of human evolution. Each clan that survived such a gauntlet, each hard choice that weighed lives against the future, sharpened the cognitive tools that would one day allow their descendants to inherit a planet. Their journey was more than a simple migration. It was a rehearsal for our entire species' improbable ascent. They learned that the greatest monsters could be steered not by spears, but by an understanding of their needs, that a community's greatest weapon was not the strength of its strongest hunter, but the clarity of its most patient observer. They were not heroes, but the terrified, intelligent, and relentlessly adaptable architects of our own hominid history, proving that to survive, you did not need to be the strongest, only the first to see the path through the monster's shadow. Their struggle whispers a question to us across the chasm of 1,000,000 years. When the sky falls and the titans walk the earth, what is the true nature of power? What remains when the fires of history burn to embers is not the strength of the beast, but the cunning of the mind that escapes it. And on the other side of the world, a different clan learns that the greatest threat does not always roar. Sometimes it hunts in absolute silence.